You can tell by the headlines, you could have told by the thumbnail, and guess what? The family, the estate, whatever you want to call it, well, considering they're $27 million richer, you can refer to them as an estate, but yeah, the family members of George Floyd got fucking paid by Minneapolis City Council, I guess. Listen, I understand it. I don't like it, but I get it, okay? The time to settle this is right now. And before we get into all the details of it, I'll just give you my impressions of it. If they would have waited, let's just say that Minneapolis City Council decided, okay, we're going to delay this. We're not going to decide on the payout right now. Okay, you'll wait until after the trial happens. Let's say Chauvin is convicted and found out that, yes, indeed, his knee on his neck was the sole result of the murder of George Floyd. Guess what happens to that $27 million? It goes through the roof, okay? Guess what happens if Derek Chauvin gets acquitted? Well, there's going to be riots. And guess what happens to that $27 million? It goes through the fucking roof. Now, okay, if he is acquitted, if Chauvin ends up getting acquitted, and there are no riots, then what happens? Well, that's just not likely. That's just not going to happen. But let's just say, hypothetically, it does. It ends up getting acquitted. Oh, I'm sorry, the criminal case ends up getting appealed. And then it ends up, there's a civil suit that goes through. And then they get awarded several magnitudes more than the $27 million. You guys remember the O.J. Simpson case? It's a fair comparison to make in this. O.J. Simpson was not found guilty in the criminal court, but he did end up losing the civil proceeding. That would be exactly what happens here, okay? I think the same thing happened with Rodney King, where the officers were not found guilty in the criminal sense, but then in the civil suit, Rodney King ended up cleaning up. So settling at $27 million sounds like a lot. Normal settlements that aren't as politically charged as this has ended up becoming is $1 million, maybe $2 million. Like even Breonna Taylor, when her family got $9 or $12 million, it was a substantial amount. It was a record amount until this one. It was obvious that this one was going to break that mold. But that one too, that entire case was maybe a little bit of a butt fuck when it comes to procedure, especially with all of the weird stuff that happened around the grand jury, what evidence was there, what wasn't, what happened with the Mitch McConnell appointed attorney general. All of this stuff that'll never get properly discovered because the criminal case got so bungled, and then the family of Breonna Taylor was just so happy with the settlement that nothing ever came out of it. So this is just preemptive hush money. And we'll get into the story here because it details a fair amount why the family doesn't deserve it and what the rationale behind settling for $27 million is. That was just my opinion, but here is a more credible source. It is the Associated Press, credible in the eyes of those who are the arbiters of truth, I suppose. The city of Minneapolis on Friday agreed to pay $27 million to settle a civil lawsuit from George Floyd's family over the man's death in police custody as jury selection continued in a former officer's murder trial. Yeah, there's seven officers. There are 7 jurors that are currently selected, and jury selection is going to continue into Monday. It'll probably be over on Monday, so there's a good chance I'll be watching that, and then we'll take a look at all of the jurors that are selected based on the evidence that's going to be available. All we're going to know is what decade the age of the person is. So if they are, let's just say 47 years old, it's going to be a man in their 40s. That's going to be about it, okay? Because there's a lot of information running out there right now where, okay, they've been dismissed because they support Black Lives Matter and they might have a bit of a black affectation to their voice. Therefore, you can deduce based on the inflections in their voice that, okay, this is a female, an African-American female that's in her mid-20s, where in actuality, it might be a little bit extreme, but it could be an older black lady who is more conservative. You know what I mean? She might just think that Black Lives Matter matters because all lives matter. You get what I'm saying? They just want to, the court has decided on this to go ahead and dispel any lies and half-truths that are out there at the moment. But going on from there, council members met privately to discuss the settlement, then returned to public session for a unanimous vote in support of the massive payout. It easily surpasses the $20 million the city approved 2 years ago to the family of a woman killed by a police officer. Oh, okay. I didn't know about that one. My mistake. Floyd's family attorney, Ben Crump, called it the largest pretrial settlement ever for the civil rights claim. I think so. and thank the city leaders for showing you care about George Floyd. How much did this fentanyl dealer chip in for that? It's going to be a long journey to justice. This is just one step on the journey to justice, Ben Crump, the race hustler, said. Even though my brother is not here, he's here with me in my heart, Felonious Floyd said. If I could get him back, I would give all this back. I don't know if that's a male or a female, but I only do over-the-top male black impressions. Settlement includes $500,000 for the South Minneapolis neighborhood. That includes the 38th and Chicago intersection that has been blocked by barricades since his death. Why are they still blocked? Why are you giving in to these secessionists that want an autonomous zone in the middle of a major metropolitan area? Huh? Kind of fucking leave that out, don't you, Associated Press? That's the George Floyd zone, autonomous zone, where a shooting and a death has occurred. Stop barricading in traitors. The city didn't immediately say how the money would be spent. Well, how about compensating those businesses that have had their traffic significantly reduced by these menaces that have accosted the district for what? Just about a year at this point? Actually, yeah, it'll be a year in May. Floyd's family filed a civil rights lawsuit in July against the city. Chauvin and 3 other officers, have been charged in his death. It's alleged that the officers violated Floyd's rights when they restrained him, and that the city allowed a culture of excessive force, racism, and impunity to flourish in its police force. Hence why they settled, because how do you actually prove or disprove racism? Like excessive force, you can argue until the cows come home. And with a civil suit, the barrier for evidence and the evidence required to find the basis of a decision is much lower than a criminal case. So here was the previous payout. In 2019, Minneapolis agreed to pay $20 million for the family of Justine Ruzic's Damond. Just go with the last name, lady, okay? An unarmed woman who was shot by a police officer after she called 911 to report hearing a possible crime happen behind her home. To settle her family's civil rights lawsuit, Damon was white. Obviously, we can tell by the great big picture and the floral accoutrements. Now, okay, $20 million for that seems a little bit more respectable in comparison, okay? She was shot. If we're just going on this, okay? She was shot dead by a police officer in her home after she called the police officers to protect her. I would agree a lot more with that $20 million payout, because that seems like a wrongful death to me. Are there extenuating circumstances? Who knows that she normally prank call 911 officers? I don't know. But based on this little synopsis, and doing that is indeed dangerous. But that seems more of an apt payout, at least in my humble opinion. It wasn't immediately clear how the settlement might affect the trial or the jury. Now being seated to hear it, Ted Samsel Jones, a criminal law expert at the Mitchell Hamlin School of Law, said it's an additional pretrial publicity that is bad for the defense and could lead some jurors to think guilt has already been decided. This is going back to the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin trial. Everybody knows it is a George Floyd trial, whatever. However, this ultimately should not affect the criminal case. It shouldn't. It will, because everybody knows that George Floyd has already gotten $27 million. His family has. So I'm sure there are a lot of Foot Lockers and local liquor stores right now just fucking making preemptive phone calls, trying to bring in new stock. All we can do is hope that the jurors will follow Cahill's instructions and decide the case based solely on the evidence presented at trial. So yeah, a huge payout. I understand it. There's precedent for it, at least in Minneapolis, and you kind of had to go up because I didn't hear word one about that previous shooting. And yeah, if she gets 20 million and nobody was rioting, and then you get the entire country, if not the entire world, burning at one point, I think a $7 million upgrade is chump change in the long run. It sucks. I'm not happy with it, but them be the cards you're dealt, right? So, with that said, guys, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.